in Edmonton, and I know we got something exciting happening here.
Absolutely. I'll be telling you about a brand new festival happening in downtown Toronto, so stay tuned for that.
Now, you may be familiar with Beth Moore. She is a best-selling Bible study author, popular speaker, and she recently released this book of fiction.
Absolutely. I had the privilege of sitting down with some amazing women to read and talk about this great book. That discussion is just in a few minutes as well.
Did you get into it when you really got into the characters?
Do you see how thick this book is?
I know.
It's a good read. You're going to want to get your copy, especially after you see our conversation. You are going to be motivated to start your own book club and join us all this month.
I'm enjoying those segments, by the way. And our CEO, Lorna Duick, connects with a valued team member. Let's head over to Lorna right now.
We have a provocative blogger, John Stackhouse, in the Crossroads team. John helps us think on God at work in our moral, political, and social issues. How do you think like a Christian about tough issues? Well, the context blogger, John Stackhouse, is the professor of religious studies at Crandall University. He's the author of several great books on living with wisdom, but now his latest new work, Why You're Here. Ethics for the Real World. John, it's great to have you in the house.
Good to be back, thank you.
Okay, why did you write this book?
I grew up in northern Canada in a Christian home that told me basically two things. Don't be bad and talk about Jesus all you can. But it didn't tell me anything about how to go to school, how to play hockey, how to date a girl. It didn't tell me anything about most of what I did most of the time. So basically just don't be bad and try to talk about Jesus a lot. So I've been interested in thinking, what does ethics look like? And by that I mean, what does it mean to be a Christian all the time?
Okay, let's unpack ethics for a moment, because ethics really is don't be bad, isn't it?
Well,
define it better than that for me.
A lot of us think of ethics as just rules of yeses and nos and do's and don'ts. But the fundamental word in Greek, ethos, has to do with the character of something. What does it mean to be a television host? What does it mean to be a professor? And that would have to do not only with yeses and nos, but also like how you dress, how you talk, what friendships you might have. So what does it mean to be in the world like this kind of person? So here was about not only yeses and nos for Christians, but why are Christians in the world? Why are human beings here? Why did God make us? And so this book goes right back to the very first chapter of the Bible and says, why did God make human beings? Well, he made human beings because he loves to love and he loves to create creative creatures, and that's what he made us to be. And so the calling for human beings is to make the world a better place, to cultivate it, to take a good world and garden it. And this is something that all human beings do, not just Christians, of course. And then later in the Bible, we encounter Christians. Why? Well, because the world had a bad fall. Because, yes, while we do want to make the world better, we also have an appetite to make it worse. We have an appetite for mischief. We have an appetite for what the Bible calls sin. And so Christians work with God to help us rediscover the center of the world in God. And then by getting everybody back online, we can become what God meant us to be.
Okay, so then an ethic, the ethics of our lives are needed because we do have an appetite, let's just call it for mischief. Sin, it's great.
Yeah.
It's a great understanding that we just get off the mark.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we understand then what God wants us to do about the ethics, about the rules?
One of the things I love about being a Christian is that God doesn't take anything of my life and say it doesn't matter. He actually cares about sports. He cares about art. He cares about romance. And he says, I want you to flourish. I want you to be everything you can be. And I grew up with the idea that God kind of didn't want that. He didn't want me to have much fun. He wanted me to keep my nose clean, drag a few people in with me, and then save us from hell. And God does want to save us from hell, but he wants to save us from all that's bad.
From making hell on earth.
Well, indeed. So he wants us to flourish. And God's vision at the beginning and the end of the Bible, first two chapters of the Bible, last two chapters of the Bible, anybody can look them up, show us this vision of a planet of richness and flourishing and abundance. This is what God wants for our lives.
So is there a baseline to decide what's good in an ethic? Is there a baseline?
Yes. Well, this is why God gave us the Bible. He gave us moral teachers, he gave us conscience, he gave us each other, but particularly because it's so easy to be confused, and because I have an appetite for badness as well, he gave us the Bible, which is a very complicated book. It's not easy to understand, but he gave us teachers as well to help us understand the Bible, and it's like an owner's manual. Owner's manuals for new cars nowadays, they're very complicated. 300 pages, owner's manuals, right?
Yeah, that's true. The owner manuals are as big as the Bible.
That's right. But it's a complicated machine, and the world's a complicated place. And the Bible's given to us. If we will learn how to read it properly, we will learn how to run ourselves and the world in an optimal way.
Okay, so stay with us because I'm going to put you on the hot seat with hot button issues about how to run the world. We're going to just run through them, a few of those hot button issues. We'll be right back.
If we're against euthanasia, and I think we should be because it's dangerous and it's in some ways immoral, what are we doing in terms of palliative care? What are we doing to make sure that it's not too frightening and too painful to be old or sick?
Media. This medium. Curated, created, constructed, and colluded to communicate, to influence, to connect, and entertain. With ease, with speed. Over 7 billion people yearning to connect, yearning to be fed, always looking out for whatever's cool, whatever's funny, whatever's trending. The medium is the message, but are we receiving the message? When everything is constantly moving, constantly changing, there is one thing that will not change, one thing that will outlast our lives, one thing that lasts longer than time itself, one thing that knows no bounds, no status, no color. That one thing has a name. As missionaries, we are here to share that one name, Jesus. Using the ease and speed of media to spread light to the lost, to communicate, to influence, to inform, to connect. We are media missionaries.
We're back with Professor John Stackhouse, the blogger at Context, and the great voice that helps us understand how to live in the real world. Ethics are his specialty, his new book, Why You're Here. Okay, John, you're going to go through the hot button round issue with us now. Let's talk about first how to navigate ethics on political correctness. And this hit me recently on the Canada Summer Jobs. I couldn't just check off the box like the government wanted me to do on finding summer interns for here. And because you can't just say, oh, sure, I'll brush that aside, that I have a certain ethic about the value of life. I am pro-life. That doesn't fit with the current Liberal government. How do you navigate political correctness?
Well, I think this whole summer jobs fiasco is so interesting. I mean, when do you ever get the Toronto Star, the Toronto Globe and Mail, and the National Post agreeing on something? Yeah. And they all agreed this is overreach. They all agreed that the Prime Minister is imposing his values on everybody else. So this has been a wake-up call that it's not just conservatives who can go too far. Our Liberal friends can go too far as well. I don't just mean capital C and capital L liberals and conservatives, but social conservatives, social liberals. So I appreciate that the Prime Minister, I think, is really trying to do what he thinks is best. But what he's not thought through, I think, properly, is how we as Canadians also value liberty and difference. We put Catholics and Protestants together and English and French together, and we've worked out things as best we can so far with First Nations. This is a complicated country. And to simplistically insist that everybody agree with the Prime Minister on this, bad idea.
So the ethic about political correctness is to live and say who you are, really. Don't let it be melted together like just we all have to be groupthink.
Well, yes, political correctness is just one group imposing its values on everybody else. And if we didn't like it when the Christians did it, we're not going to like it when other people do it.
Okay. Next hot button issue. It used to be normal that you did not kill yourself. I love it how you've written in one of your columns. We used to ask, let God decide, about our end of life. And now we have documented cases. There's been over 2,000 euthanasias. We even have documented cases of aging, of just being a senior is a reason to be able to ask a doctor to help kill yourself. Explain that one to the grandchildren. What are we going to do about deciding an ethic on euthanasia?
This reminds me of the abortion debates of 30 years ago when people would say, we're against abortion, and the comeback was, well, what are you doing for the pregnant moms, right? And I would say the same thing here. If we're against euthanasia, and I think we should be because it's dangerous and it's in some ways immoral, what are we doing in terms of palliative care? What are we doing to make sure that it's not too frightening and too painful to be old or sick?
Okay, but conscience care for our Ontario doctors is about to get thrown under the bus. What do we do there? A doctor can no longer say, no, I will not refer for euthanasia.
Yes, and I think that's another example of political correctness, of overreach. I think that the Ontario Physicians College has gone way too far.
Thousands of parents, not just Christian, left the public school system in protest last year over sexual ethics, including gender confusion issues in the school system. Are we here to en masse make an army like that?
Well, I think we want to try to hang in there with our society as best we can. These are our fellow human beings, and they're trying to find their way in the world and trying to honor each other and make the world flourish. So I tend to be pretty pro-public schools until I can't be. And so I think we have to hang in there. Jesus wanted us to be in the world. He said, I don't want you to just take yourself out of it. I understand Christian schooling, and I think in certain situations it makes a lot of sense. And I think what we want to try to do is work with our elected officials and school boards, our education officials, and say, do you really want us to go into our own schools? If you want us to hang in there, you got to make room for us too. And we need to use the language that our friends from immigrant populations have used, that our friends from Jewish populations have used, that our friends from LGBTQ have used, and say, make room for us too, and we'll be partners with you. Don't drive us out. And we've been driven out in many respects from some of the political parties in Canada. We've been driven out from some of the public institutions in Canada, and that's not Canadian.
Okay, John Stackhouse, good thing you wrote the rest of it in a book. Why you're here. Ethics for the Real World. Don't read it fast. Take time to learn well with it. And here's how you can get your copy of it. It's just a special offer for our wonderful viewers. John, thank you very much for teaching us about ethics.
Good to see you.
Join Yes TV for a Stampede breakfast off the back of the Yes TV Chuck Wagon. Watch for Robert Melnichuk and his crew taping on the grounds for the Yes TV Calgary Stampede Special. And come cheer on the Yes TV Chuck Wagon at the GMC Rangeland Derby Saturday night.
Can I take a moment and just ask you a question? Do you have some challenges in your life? You know, are you feeling lonely? Maybe you've lost a loved one, going through divorce, sickness, whatever it might be. Please know we always have people standing by, ready to talk to you. There are people just full of compassion. They're on the other side of the prayer lines because they really care. I really do encourage you to contact them today. And, you know, they won't judge you or anything like that. And regardless of where you're on your spiritual journey, they're there by phone. You can give a call, 1-866-273-4444. Or if you don't want to call, but you want to inquire, we have email address available to you at prayer@crossroads.ca. Well, I hope you've been enjoying our summer reading book club. I know I have been. I just love the dialogue between the ladies. And you'll enjoy the selection. It's a fiction novel by best-selling author Beth Moore entitled The Undoing of St. Sylvanus. And here's some discussion with the book club girls.
All I'm going to say is chapter 32. That's all I'm going to say, because that's when I just jumped. So I'll just leave that with you at home.
Yeah.
You know, spiritual warfare, spiritual realms is highlighted in this book. And so as she delves into the spiritual realm as well, I know I'm not a big fan of scary movies or things like that. But I was just like, Beth, where are you taking us? But also again, truth and reality, especially in New Orleans, you know, that's the spiritual realm is very big. What were your thoughts on that?
I was scared. I was scared. There were times when I did have to put the book down, like I said earlier, because it was like, whew, I am just like shaking right now. But as I think Ruth said it earlier, it's a reality check. And so some of the you know, the paths that some of the characters chose to go down, that is real life for many. And, you know, kind of exposing themselves in ways that, unbeknownst to them, is putting them in really, as a reader, you're like, no! But for them, they don't realize. And that's real life. That's real life stuff. And so, you know, I appreciated the reminder of just, this is the real world. You know, we are wanting to be the hands and feet of Christ. We have to be sensitive to the fact that we might be aware of some things that to someone else, they're oblivious to maybe the danger or the harm or whatever. So it's just interesting how it all kind of comes together. Yeah.
You know, I'm glad she went there. I think that, you know, we as Christians, you know, we can't stay in the bubble. You know, that whole thing about, you know, we are, you know, we're in the world. And so, you know, a book like this to give us insight and I think help and understanding helps us. And I don't think that you can be afraid of it. And I'll be honest, Maggie, there are people on blogs that are like, oh, because of that, we're not going to read it. Well, no. Like what we're saying is this is actually good for us as people who say we follow Jesus to know what's going on, pray, do due diligence and be intentional about how to help others, how to pray, how to support in your church, whatever it is. It's being informed. And I think as Christians, we do a disservice if we don't, you know, we don't look for, I'm not saying look for, but we shy away from being informed, reading, studying. That doesn't do us any good for the world if we're gonna reach them. And so I think I'm actually proud of Beth because it could have been the easy way to kind of gloss over and like it's like one page and then everything worked out.
Or not even mention it.
Or not even mention it. Or then they prayed and everything was fine. Right? Like yay, you know. But I think that takes courage. It takes courage for, you know, someone like Beth, who on the platform people see her as this way to then write this, but it also is great because it helps us. And I think that's a great part of the book.
It's summer. What a perfect time to enjoy reading an exciting new novel from a very familiar name, New York Times bestselling author and Bible teacher, Beth Moore.
The Undoing of St. Sylvanus is a story about, well, that's for me to know and for you to find out.
This special book will take your imagination on a summer vacation to New Orleans, where a wily house manager and a cast of saints and sinners bond together to expose the forces that took the life of the father, while daughter Jillian walks a web of spiritual and personal danger. It's a riveting fictional story you'll enjoy. Quantities are limited, so call today to request your personal copy, 1-800-265-3100, or visit crossroads.ca/donate. And thank you for giving to 100 Huntley Street this month. Well, my next guests are throwing a party, and you're invited. This Sunday, July 15th, is the Victorious Festival at Dundas Square in downtown Toronto. To tell us more, I'm joined by Christine Hanna and Lawrence Arton. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So tell us what's happening on Sunday.
So Victorious Festival is going to be just a really, really good time. This is actually our 4th year putting it on. It's right in the heart of downtown Toronto, so at Yonge Dundas Square. And there's going to be music and food and entertainment, and it's just a really, really great time to come hang out with your old friends or to make new friends. We've got a really good lineup. There's going to be Building 429 and Flame and a local worship band and For the Fairest. So there's just going to be tons of really good entertainment, and live music is always the best.
Yes.
So it's going to be a really, really fun time. Yeah.
And what's the motivation behind this, Lawrence?
Well, when Land of Hope started, we were actually looking...
And Land of Hope is the charity that's running Victorious
Yeah, it's
Festival.
the nonprofit organization that we're part of.
Yeah.
The whole vision behind Land of Hope was to spread the good news through the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. And Victorious Festival was actually one of the services that we were actually bestowing to go on and perform and having people come out there and listen to the good word.
So when you started Victorious Festival the first year, what was the response like?
Well, it was tremendous.
Yeah.
We had thousands and thousands of people come by. As you know, hard downtown, they have a ton of traffic coming by. We had food vendors all over. We had Flame come out. He was off the hook. And it was just...
He's a local rapper.
Yeah. And he was a Grammy nominated, actually. And it was just a block party, just expanded.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was great. It was unanticipated for us, but we loved it.
So it's going to be a big party this Sunday. Tell me a little bit more about Land of Hope.
Sure. So we are a nonprofit organization. Right now we're 11 core members. It's not our main job. It's not what all of us do for a living. We actually all have our own jobs outside of Land of Hope, but it's just we meet together and we plan things and do outreach events and do festivals like Victoria's Festival. It's just a way to plant seeds of hope into our community and to give back to our community and just to spread the good news of salvation. Like I feel like we live in such a really broken world and there's so much sadness and so much despair and so much negativity. So it's so nice to be able to just kind of break that a little bit and just to infuse people with a glimmer of something bigger than them, something that can really fulfill them and give them joy, like complete joy that maybe they've never even experienced before.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And with Land of Hope, right, we, you know, being out there, we started out in 2012, I believe, in Montreal. But when it really hit the road running, it was 2014 with Shadi, our founder, when he came over to Toronto with his wife, Sarah. And basically, it was just a group of friends, and now it just has grown into 11 members, or just volunteers, but they made sure that the service is the priority. And, you know, we have full-time jobs, and Land of Hope does solely run on donations from individuals all the way to big organizations. So God has really blessed it.
Yeah. And Victoria's Festival is one of many things that you guys do.
Right.
Tell me about your homelessness outreach and what you do with that.
So the program is called Impact. It's a community outreach, and it has a wide range of services underneath it. We have soup kitchens. We have community builds. For example, we team up with Habitat for Humanity. We go on sandwich runs. We participated on Christmas Child operation, and Impact is basically looking for ways to empower the needy. So we have future projects that are on the way that are going to be based out of downtown Toronto, and it's basically, again, that vision of, you know, preaching the gospel to all those that need it, because we know it's out there.
And speaking of that, you also have an Arabic outreach as well.
Yes.
Tell us about that, Christine.
Yes. So it's funny you asked me because I probably speak the least Arabic in our group, but our whole group is actually somewhat
Arabic.
Middle Eastern.
Yes.
They all have like an Arabic origin. So we do once-a-year conferences, and it's not just in Toronto. We've spread between here and Montreal and Calgary. We've kind of traveled to a couple of different cities and done conferences in Arabic to reach out to the Arabic-speaking people. There's just a huge community that just needs to hear about Christ, and not even just for unbelievers, but for believers who just need to be refreshed. So we organize these conferences with worship and with ministry meetings that can just empower and lift up Christians, as well as spread the gospel to draw others to Christ. So it's a really great opportunity, I think.
Yeah.
Now, both of you said that you have full-time jobs.
Yeah.
And this is a volunteer opportunity that you take advantage of. But what is the motivation behind giving your free time to an organization like this?
I'll go first.
To be honest, it was I've been raised in Canada, right? And having the opportunity to join something that's greater than you are, right? And in a comfortable atmosphere, which is amongst friends. So essentially, that's what Land of Hope. We're all friends. We came around the table, we come up with ideas, and we go out there and do it. And God has blessed us immensely, and we see His fingerprints on everything we do. You know, from the downs to the low, to the highs, and that's what keeps us going. We never knew it can get to this, but it's been a great journey so far.
It's grown quite a bit. And when God's given you something and you're able to give it forward to someone else and just spread that message, because the gospel is not something for us to keep and self-contained. Like, it needs to go out. It needs to be spread, because there's still so many people that, you know, haven't heard or haven't had access to the good news of salvation. So it's nice that God's given us the ability to pour it out to other people.
All right, so the date is July 15th.
Yes.
Mark your calendars. There's going to be a party. I hope you're going to be there. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Felt like the end of the world to me, and it felt like I didn't have anything left to live for.
Rather than being elated or thanking God that I was still alive, that I had another chance, I started picking up more Ambien off the floor that I'd spilled.
At the revelation of Jesus Christ, our trials will result in purpose and honor and glory.
I hadn't done anything except gotten prayed for, and I wanted to know more.
The person that says hope is what keeps me alive can also go, well, wait a minute, if I have hope, there must be joy here too.
And then we see that, wait, there's purpose in my difficulty, there's purpose in my trials.
I tell people that I took my own life and God gave it back to me.
I felt something I'd never felt before, which I now know is the Holy Spirit.
This moment doesn't have to define me. With sorrow, with grief, with anxiety.
Jesus heals, and that there is hope for me, and it doesn't matter what doctors say, and it's just like somebody gives you an injection of life.
I love a party, Maggie.
Yeah.
And look, that's going to be a great event, and for a great cause, homelessness and helping people out. You know, and
it's free.
And it's
by
free.
The way.
That's even the best part
Even
of it all.
better.
But I was thinking about something John Stackhouse had said earlier on. You know, that God loves art.
Yeah.
He loves sports. Can you believe that? So Elton and I are okay, and your boys. You know, and he doesn't want to. He's not a killjoy.
Yeah.
He wants us to have fun, clean fun. We can live a healthy life. But that's what, you know, God created us, gave us these gifts and these abilities to do things and then enjoy life.
I think that's such a great point, because when we think and we look at Genesis, I mean, it's all about creation. It's all about creativity, that God created us. You know, I was talking to Ethan, our 11-year-old, the other day, and I was saying, you know, the fascination of our fingerprint. And even a little snowflake, if you look at it, they're all so different. And that takes a creative God to be able to do that. So how do we show our love for God in our creativity? We can do that so freely, and I think this is a great festival to show that.
It is, you know, and I, as a parent, and that's one thing with my kids, I said, you know what, go for your dreams. And one of my youngest daughters is a poet, and recently on Father's Day, she just wrote to me and said, Dad, thank you for allowing me to have my dreams. God has a dream for your life, and if you've not yet made that commitment to Jesus, begin the adventure, 1-866-273-4444. I'm not going to say it's going to be an easy ride, but I promise it will not be boring.
Absolutely. Well, tomorrow we have Deborah Manou's story of the 60s scoop. She was a survivor of that. Great story that you're going to want to tune into. And if you have a story that you'd love to share with us, go to 100huntley.com, click on the icon there, and tell us your story. Have a great day.
See you next time.
Bye.